It's important to note that Learning Target 7.9 says to evaluate a quadratic equation in a real-world context and interpret the meaning, which means if all you do is play around with your calculator and find the right answer and write the correct answer down, you're not going to get any credit for that. This is, can you read a problem, write and solve a quadratic equation to answer the question. So, as I'm looking at this first problem, the first thing I notice is the word product. And I know that product means to multiply two things together. So the product of two things is 156. And they're saying two positive consecutive integers, so that's just two numbers. So x would be the first number. And then if it's consecutive, it means in a row. I'm not skipping anything. So if I think 13, the next consecutive integer would be 14. 25, the next consecutive integer would be 26. So I take the first one and I add 1 to get the second one. So this is the second number. And it says if I multiply those, because product means to multiply those together, if I multiply those together, I get 156. Now to solve this, I'm going to have to distribute the x to get x squared plus 1x equals 156. Then I would subtract 156 from both sides to get rid of the 156 over here to get x squared plus 1x minus 156 equals 0. At this point, I could solve this using the quadratic formula or solve this one by factoring. Now this is the only one on the homework or on the notes that's relatively easy to solve by factoring. So that you have an example of that, I'll solve this one. I know that in order to get that x squared, I would have to have an x and an x in my factor pairs. And the two constants here should multiply to give me the constant of negative 156. If I don't know my factor pairs of negative 156, and probably you don't, well, one has to be positive and one negative to multiply to get a negative. The positive is going to have to be, and this is not necessarily math raising, more positive than the negative is negative, because I need to add them together and have a sum of positive 1. So negative 1, positive 156 wouldn't do it, because I'd add those together and I'd get 155. So I'm just going to keep walking through my factor pairs till I find the one that works. 2 goes into 156 78 times. 3 goes into 156 52 times. Again, the sum is a positive 1, so I keep going. 4 goes into 156, let me see, 39 times. 5 won't go in there. 6 will go into 156, let me see, 26 times. 7 won't, 8 won't, 9 won't, 10 won't, 11 won't, 12 will go into 156 13 times. Not only have I reached the end of my factor pair list, I've actually found the one where the sum is positive 1. So x minus 12 times x plus 13 equals 0. Two things multiply together to give me an answer of 0. Well, that means that x minus 12 could equal 0, and this would work. Or x plus 13 could equal 0, and this would work to give me 0. I would add 12 to both sides here to get x equals positive 12. And I would subtract 13 from both sides here to get x equals negative 13. Now, I don't just circle this as my final answer. I go back and see what the problem was asking me to do. They want two positive consecutive integers that I can multiply to be 156. So in the context of this problem, this negative one makes no sense, because it has to be a positive consecutive integer. So my first number is x, which is 12. My second number is x plus 1, so that's 12 plus 1, which is 13. Then I answer the question using a complete sentence. The two numbers are 12 and 13. If I multiply those together, I will get 156. Now, the second one, to find the area of a rectangle, it's length times width, or base times height. So I'd have to take x times the x plus 10, because it says the length of the pool is 10 meters more than its width. The area is 875 square meters. So if I multiply the length times the width, I get 875. I'm going to start this problem the same way I did the other one. Distribute to get x squared plus 10x equals 875. Then I would subtract 875 from both sides to get this side to be 0. And I'd have x squared plus 10x minus 875 equals 0. I'm going to use the quadratic formula on this one because I don't want to look at factor pairs of negative 875. So a is the coefficient of x squared, which is 1. b is the coefficient of x, which is positive 10. And c is the constant, which is negative 875. My quadratic formula, and I will give you the quadratic formula on the test, x equals, big long fraction bar, opposite of b, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And this means 4 times a times c. This means 2 times a. So, plugging into that, x equals the opposite of b. If b is positive 10, the opposite of that is negative 10. Plus or minus the square root of, this is to take b and square it. So I'm going to take 10 and square it. In this step, I'm only substituting. Minus 4 times a times c becomes minus 4 times a is 1 times c is negative 875 all over 2 times a, so all over 2 times 1. So if I take my calculator and I punch in 10 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 875, I get 3600. And then the 2 times 1 will give me 2. I'm going to get 2 answers out of this. They're going to come because I have both a plus and a minus here. So one of mine is going to be x equals negative 10 minus the square root of 3600 over 2. One's going to be x equals negative 10 plus the square root of 3600 over 2. Now remember, when you plug this into your calculator, you punch in negative 10 minus the square root of 3600 equals before you divide by 2. And this one would be negative 35. And negative 10 plus the square root of 3600 equals, and then divided by 2 is going to give me 25. Well, if x is the width of this pool, it doesn't make sense to say that the pool is negative 35 meters wide. So this one doesn't make any sense, which means x is 25. So the width of the pool is 25 meters, which means the length of the pool is 25 plus 10, which is 35 meters. So to answer the question, the pool is asking for the dimensions of the pool is 25 meters by 35 meters. So I wrote and solved a quadratic equation, and then I answered the question that they were asking. Look for the next part in part 2 video.